Hey there.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
You did that
Yeah.
last time.
What?
Not say welcome back.
Did I? Well, welcome back again. I'm retconning.
Nice. We have a great show for you today.
Yes, we do.
We just had a great conversation with the team over at Gusto.
Yes.
And just to be clear, I wanted to mention this now so that people aren't like, Gusto, the payroll HR company?
No.
Not the payroll HR company. This is Gusto, a matter company. They are a creative force that brings brands to life. They're also part of a holistic effort that elevates brands at Matter. With Matter, they're able to leverage their myriad of services and tell better, more complete stories on behalf of their clients. We learned a lot from them on this call. I think it was really, really insightful and really helpful.
I think it's been
folks.
really cool to hear about how a lot of the times the challenges that a lot of creatives and business owners are facing are like similar problems, but just happening at different scales.
Yeah.
And sort of how to navigate those and like how different creative teams navigate and solve those challenges is actually really cool to learn about.
Another thing that has been happening, I think, is I've been taking things away from these conversations and realizing that, the challenges that we're talking about, these knowledge gaps, are not just happening to us. Right, they're happening to other companies and other creatives within those companies as well. So it's really honestly, it's validating.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of validation for sure that we're not just like talking in our little bubble about the different challenges that are happening in the industry. They happen everywhere, and so it's very cool to see the different approaches.
So I'm going to introduce these guys. So we sat down with Tim Bradley, Nicole Bedard, and Joe Skoniecki, executive producer, art director, and senior motion designer at Gusto. And they were fantastic guests. It's the first time we had 3 people on.
Yeah.
So it pushed us a little bit,
but in the best way.
But in the best way, and fantastic conversation.
Yeah. So we were really, really happy to talk with them. So with that, why don't we just jump right into the conversation?
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone.
We're here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really happy to have you. We're really happy to talk with another creative team.
Yeah, really.
Because I'm sure there's a lot that we're going to be able to dive into here.
I just got to say, before,
please.
You guys are the first creative team that we've had as a unit.
Yes.
Three people.
Awesome.
I think you're pushing our limits of all technologies.
We'll find out together.
Doing great.
Yeah,
yes.
So.
Could have fooled us.
Definitely. But yeah, so I think we should start by just, having our audience get to know each of you a little bit more. And we also recognize that sometimes we've talked about this before in a different episode of the podcast, but sometimes creative studios will have the same name for a role and maybe sometimes that role is exactly the same in terms of activities or tasks, but sometimes it's different. So could each of you give us an idea of who you are, what you do, and kind of what Gusto's all about? And maybe I'll start by I've heard the term popcorning it over to Tim to kick things off.
Awesome. I like that. So I'm Tim Bradley. I'm executive producer at Gusto, also VP with Matter, the agency holistically. Gusto, I kind of like to describe it as like the moon to the earth of the greater agency. We're like very autonomous and there's that gravitational pull, of course, but like we're mostly out to, create and serve our own clients independently, which is awesome. There's 22 creatives on our team. A healthy chunk of that are motion designers and animators, which Nicole and Joe can introduce here in a second. And then the rest of the group is rounded out by writers, director of photography, director, editors, podcast producers.
Nice.
In our footprint, about half the groups here on the East Coast, sort of like Boston, Metro North, and then Denver and Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
I'm going to popcorn it over to Nicole.
Awesome.
Hey, so I'm Nicole Bedard, and I'm an art director here at Gusto. So I help, lead our motion graphics and animation team. Sort of a fun fact, when I started here 7 years ago. I was the first full-time motion graphics hire.
Nice.
And in that yeah, which is very cool. So in that time, the team has grown to 7
Yay.
with experiences in, all kinds of disciplines and expertise. So it's been super rewarding to just see the team grow from such its humble beginnings to where it is now.
Oh, totally.
Awesome.
And so I'll pass it over to Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Skoniecki. I'm a senior motion designer here at Gusto. I've been here just under 5 years, and yeah, I work directly under Nicole. Lately, now that I have a senior title, I'm kind of managing some junior designers. I'm kind of helping facilitate more projects. Uh, yeah, and my hands are in storyboarding and style frames and animation and all that stuff as well.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
It's always interesting to see, even like if you've been at a company for a long time, how your roles might start to shift and change as you're going
Yeah.
up the ladder, or I've heard it's both a vertical ladder and a horizontal ladder sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
think it's building your own rungs along the way too.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a fair way of thinking about it. Yeah, totally.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about process. We know everyone's production process is different, so I'm very curious of what a typical production workflow looks like. Can you just give us like a rundown, a little overview on how, like what you do with a new client when they come through?
Yeah, sure. So I'm usually the first voice or face that the prospect sees. We're kind of a unique entity where it's like we have a lot of tenured clients, that we've been working with for, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years respectively, of our sort of like tripod of stable clients, I like to describe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have our integrated marketing and public relations peers that have, their roster of clients on retainers for those disciplines, but then those often have project needs, like customer stories or events and recruiting efforts or employer branding and things like that we support with. And then of course we're hustling trying to get the next new client too, right?
Right.
So it's unique challenge sort of every day, but yeah, so ultimately starts with a conversation, right? Just like
Mm.
a lot of times a client will be like, I need this thing. And it's not like it's a red flag, but it's kind of a yellow flag of like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that's what you need? And so it's a lot of just like asking thoughtful questions and why, the layers of why, like, why do you need this on down? And so usually that helps us understand, who they're trying to talk to, of course, but where and when and why again. And so develop a scope of work based on that. We've really found that, and again, it's kind of like each studio is unique, but for us, it's like, what is that flagship piece, that premiere piece, we call it, right? That whatever it is, just call it like a 90-second explainer for a new product launch or something like that, right? It's pretty standard. From there, it's helping them understand how they can leverage that asset beyond that 90-second piece, right? So, obviously the social versions, animated GIFs, audiograms, static frames. We have a couple cool stories where our illustrations then evolved into trade show booths
Nice,
on
nice.
behalf of the
Wow.
clients,
That's
right?
cool.
So
That's very cool.
it's a lot of just sort of like understanding how they can make the most of this experience with us and the the product, I guess, so to speak, right?
Totally.
And from there, so once like the scope of work is established, it can always evolve, but at least it's like guardrails to ensure we're hitting milestones and budgets accordingly. And then at that point, it's usually, if not already, a conversation with Nicole and Joe as far as like aesthetic and how we, are going to approach this specific project uniquely for that client.
Yeah, I was actually going to kind of follow up there to Joe and Nicole about sort of at what point in the production process are you involved, and how often do you kind of manage or navigate the client relationship, or is it mostly internal? Like what does that relationship look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm involved with those conversations with Tim. Sometimes it's like directly after we have the sign scope. I look at what the project needs are. Like we generally have a good idea of what direction we're gonna go in. So at that point, it's like as I said, with a team of 7, people have a lot of different talents and skills. So it's like who on the team would be best suited for this project. And then, of course, we're also talking with our copywriting team to say, talk about what is the story going to look like. So yeah, sort of, I wouldn't say trickle down, but I'm brought in at that stage, and then
ripple effect.
that's a better word.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
That's collaboration right there at its
Oh, yeah.
finest, when you're brainstorming like the right terminology
Yeah,
to use
yeah,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, what about you, Joe?
Yeah, I would say like after kind of what Nicole talked about kind of gets set and going, when we start actually developing the style of something, we move into mood boards and style frames and storyboards. That's generally where I come in and the rest of our team to try and start to really solidify what the client is looking for. And a big part of that is education. Like Tim said, like, what do you really want? What do you really need? And how can you utilize it to its fullest? Maybe a character piece is the best thing to do. So along with style frames, it would be character design. It would be like showing how these different pieces can work together. And then through there, following through animation and sound design and Final Cut,
Yeah.
through those deliverables Tim talked about.
Nice. Yeah,
And expectations all the way.
Yes.
always, it's always needed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it kind of leads into like the next question we had,
Yeah.
which was kind of, if I'm a marketer or a potential client, I'm coming to your door, and I've maybe never made an animated video before. I could be, really intimidated by the whole process with everything I've done in my own research or just getting referrals from people. I'm curious what kinds of pitfalls there are at each stage of the process that you try to avoid, and whether that's a communication problem or an education problem or everything in between. Like what are some pitfalls that each of you try to avoid in the process? Because I imagine too that you each have a certain subset of responsibilities with the client in some way.
For me, especially with inexperience doesn't sound fair, but just someone that hasn't like experienced this before. Usually the first word of caution that I'll explain is the levels of key stakeholders, right? Like that seems to be something that can get glossed over if it's not accounted for early and often, right? Because it might be like a product marketing manager and like, oh, we need this thing. Okay, sure, this seems very clear to us, and we'll go through the milestones along the way, and then towards not exactly the finish line, but towards let's say animation, we're like very far along. They'll be like, oh well, my CMO doesn't like the story or something. And so, well, this person was never included in any communication to this point, right? And so that's often that look in the mirror of like, is that on us? So we're trying to like really establish that precedent early, right? Like, who are the key stakeholders? When do they need to be included? And then we'll often caution them like, well, actually, they should all be here, when we're establishing the aesthetic, when we're talking through script and we're talking through audience and things like that. So that's probably the biggest gotcha that just falls on everybody, right? Like, kind of makes the product marketer look bad. It makes us like just run up against deadlines or whatever bandwidth is included. So yeah, that's probably the biggest one from my perspective.
Yeah, and I'll chime in for a second here. That's something that Alex
Salzberg,
Salzberg
yeah.
brought up last time in our other podcast, which is basically like you don't know who in the room is actually in charge, right, of the conversation. But there's also like, who do you have to make happy? Those are like kind of sometimes two different people.
I'm hearing a lot of similar things that we're talking about here also, but just like the same problem is still happening, but at scale.
Yeah,
and
right.
that's so how do you navigate that challenge there?
Yeah.
But I don't.
I did hear.
Oh, please go ahead.
Just quickly, I did hear this. I heard this very not story, but just like this quip the other day that was like, yeah, of course you want to make your CEO happy, but how do you do that? By making your audience happy, right? Like if your audience is happy, by default, your CEO is going to be happy. So just helping them, whoever's lower on the totem pole, understand and appreciate that. And we have to instill that trust that we have their audience's best interest in mind, right? And that by default will make the CEO happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good framing. Like if you frame the conversation always from the audience perspective, then that's a nice out for anyone.
Start at the end.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
even if you're in that low totem pole or somewhere in the middle, if you're like, oh, is this going to make the audience happy?
Mhm.
That's always like
Yeah.
a mindset shift where,
I've heard the phrase too, what is it, like happy wife, happy life? And maybe there's something there that rhymes with clients or like
Shout out Mother's
Yeah.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's
yes,
Day.
happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, Nicole or Joe, did you have something you wanted to
Yeah.
add there too?
So I think for, a lot of clients, there's a desire to have this thing yesterday, right?
Mm.
Which makes sense. Like the sooner it's in the world, the faster it's doing work on your behalf. But I encourage clients, not to rush the process. Because this can often come around and kind of bite us in the end.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, you get it.
We-
You
yeah,
hear
we-
that, clients?
Oh yeah.
You hear that?
Yeah.
We hear you.
You know,
yeah.
like for, visual changes, are, for example, are easier to make, quicker to make earlier in the process, a still image in a storyboard. That's easier to change than once we fully animated it. So, again, to use storyboards as an example, if we rush that process, there's a possibility that we then have to put even more time into the project in the animation phase, which ultimately takes longer time to complete. So, just giving each step the respect and time that it needs will ultimately lead to the best project in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you, I forget what example it was, but if you spend, 10 minutes to do this drawing, it was like I don't know, it was like an Instagram story or a LinkedIn post or something like that, where some guy was like, okay, 10 minutes to draw Spider-Man and 2 hours to draw Spider-Man and, 50 hours to draw Spider-Man. You can see like the immense difference in the quality of that visual image. And so that's kind of the same thing. You let the artist do their thing through your eyes and through your input, but give it the time that it needs
Within that fun budget.
within that fun budget.
Exactly.
Always.
Yeah, Joe, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I was going to say, Nicole and I often, when we talk to clients, so we're prepping something to be presented to a client, it's important to remind them of like a show versus tell mentality.
Yeah.
We put together scripts, or we work with copywriters to put together scripts. And then when those scripts are sent to the client, they tend to add a few more words. And I don't necessarily know that that means that the video will turn from 90 seconds to 5 minutes or who knows what.
Right.
So
Yep.
it's great to have like a, instead of saying we do X, Y, and Z, we can show our characters or show our motion shapes doing something reminiscent of that. We can show them coming together. We can show them performing an action that lets the audience and the viewer know what they're doing. Knowing that your viewer is smart enough to know what's going on screen, along with hearing the voiceover, is challenging, especially when you don't work in creative.
Right.
Separating those different sides of the brain. But it's really fun when you get to do that and people are like, oh, that makes perfect sense. The balls on screen are doing that. It's so cool.
It clicks
So,
and it's like
Yeah.
I feel like
exactly.
it's like when it's like a client gets to like learn a new language when they
Yeah.
get to see something come to like the fruits of their labor come together and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I understand the process now. I understand how it all works."
Yeah.
It's like you've done it. We're so proud of you, client.
Yes. And we're like, oh my God, you guys did it. We're
Yeah.
sending our kids off to college and into the world.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things there that it reminds me of, I think, is like what I realize is like we work with a lot of nonprofits. We work with folks who are writers, who are writer first mentality, like writing first mentality. And coming at it from a visual perspective is always like a challenge for them, I think. And it just takes a little bit of time to learn the language. But once you get it, once it clicks one time,
It's
it clicks
repeatable.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like learning to ride a bike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome.
A few things we've tried to embrace, and again, it just depends on sort of the client individually, but like having those examples from a past experience, right? Just sort of like, all right, here's what the script and the storyboard looked like V1, and then here's the final product, right? So we can sort of talk through, and that hand holding, might feel arduous or whatever, but it's like it's helpful, to take that time that Nicole is talking about, right? Just to like taking the time on our behalf shows that we care enough for them to understand where we're trying to go with them, right? The client being them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, are there a quick follow up to like, like navigating that space between um creative and communication, creative communication. Are there any opportunities in there? Like if I again coming at this from a new place, I've never done this before. What are some opportunities there that I can like take advantage of?
So, if we're talking about a client where this is their first experience creating a video, I think this first time will probably be what feels like the hardest.
Mm.
Mm,
And moving forward, they'll be more familiar with the process, more comfortable with the process. And if they move forward with us, we'll already have that understanding of their brand and that experience with them so that together we can create something, more seamlessly. And that's something that we really love at Gusto is creating those partnerships and those relationships so that we can be our clients' champions.
That makes sense.
you're speaking our language, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I've honestly, for some reason, I've never made this kind of analogy before, but it's like, like a client, if I'm deciding I'm gonna go to the gym, that's my New Year's resolution. Like, there's always a hump there to get through
Oh
of
yeah.
like this sort of like mental hump of like, oh, but I'm starting to question it. And I think
Is it worth it?
is it worth it?
Yeah.
Right. And if clients are seeing like they know that short form's coming, they know that gifts are here, but there's something
Yeah.
there that they just have to get over that first hump and then everything's smooth sailing from there. So
Yeah,
I
for sure.
totally feel that. Yeah.
One thing that I think clients will discover is, like Tim mentioned in the beginning, they don't necessarily know what they want or what they necessarily need. We've had people come to us wanting a brand anthem, and it
Mm.
kind of turns into more of a product explainer, or it might be
Mhm.
something that's like, oh, this might be better fitted for a social cut that really shows off this particular product in this way. Or like, let's show your UI. Like, this seems like it would be a better story.
Mm.
So not only do they, see a whole new light, but they're like, oh, we do need that. And we actually have all of these products that we would love to like go through and showcase. And after they see, one, things can be templatized or
Mhm.
things can be branded in a way that they're like, we can see all of our products doing this. This is great.
Mm.
Mm.
Which is obviously very rewarding. And it's cool to see them kind of figure that out and realize that you don't have to jam pack everything into one piece.
Right.
Because as we see in today's market, shorter and shorter videos are becoming more popular with the advent of shorter social medias like
Mhm.
TikTok and all of that. So it's, I don't know, it's like an evolution of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that makes
As a
sense.
total side note of like, there was like a YouTube channel that was called like 5 Second Films or something like that. And I think
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
getting back to that. Like we're circling back
Yes.
around. Like we started there for a while and then it got longer and then it's back to
Yeah, right,
even
yeah.
shorter. Like 1 second would be all you need.
It's It's wild. And you
Yeah.
see Gen Z getting into the workforce doing their ads now, and you're like, "Whoa, these kids are changing it up." Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
we're gonna see some really incredible things soon, I think.
I
Nice.
agree. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, and I mean, like quite specifically with clients, we're like, don't sleep on the GIF. It's like
Mm.
that simple motion. You can plug it. It's so versatile in emails and
Yeah.
presentations, etc. That it's like use that thing. It's for this very reason, to plant that sort of seed of an idea that like what if
Mhm.
on their client's behalf, right? So it's excellent.
I'm sorry,
Definitely.
Tim, did you say GIF or GIF?
Oh boy, here we go.
The- yeah, this is the whole podcast is gonna
I
derail now.
I always say jife
Uh,
just to
mix it up.
mix it up.
Jife?
Jife. Because it can't be
Yeah,
wrong. It
Jeef.
cannot be
Mhm,
wrong.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
good.
I'm a GIF person,
Yeah.
so
Meanwhile, I'm like checking myself. I'm like, what did I say? Did I? Yeah, sorry.
totally fair.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
So I'm curious, kind of in the interest of time as well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
maybe jump ahead a little bit, but how do you decide what creative mediums? We've talked a little bit about this already, but how do you decide when a client's coming through what creative medium is best for their potential strategy or what they're trying to go for, their goals? Because I think, Tim, you mentioned this a little bit that like sometimes you're trying to convince them a little bit. Maybe they come in and they say, hey, I want to make, 30 I don't know, whiteboard videos, or I want to make 30, So, yeah, see, I'm so glad you got the same reaction.
Going through a tunnel.
It's an audio medium, but if you're listening, everyone just shifted in their seats uncomfortably.
Big time.
Yes, right. And so how do you make the case then to be like, oh, well, let's do 5 videos of a different quality and a different nature? Like, what does that process look like for you all?
Yeah, I mean, this is a squishy one, right? Because it's like you obviously like don't want to be like rude, or you obviously want to carry the you want to be empathetic to what their goal is, like what the client's trying to achieve. And so I think it's the internal reminder of that, whilst also being patient and being like, okay, well, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from. Experience says this, the industry statistics say this, attention spans say this. Like the use case of where you're trying to accomplish this goal is better in XYZ ways, right? So a lot of it's just like fact checking in a way, I suppose. But yeah, it's delicate. I think a lot of it is just like, we're fortunate that we have like, I don't know, thousands and thousands of videos and experiences under our belt, that it's just like, it's kind of easy to look in the portfolio and be like, well, this, I understand where this is coming from, but this way, based on experience, holds merit,
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's fair.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It actually makes me have kind of a quick follow-up question there of like, we've had situations before where a potential client will come to us and say, I have a very specific thing that I'm looking for as an example. And then if you don't have it, maybe we can't do work. And so I'm curious if you've had that situation before too, where it's like, how do you either showcase that like, this is the closest example we have to it, but it might not be exactly what you're looking for? Because, as I'm sure you imagine too, we're trying to like, if we're trying to expand our artistic capabilities too, but we don't have that specific example, like it's a sort of chicken and the egg situation of like, how do you convince clients to get on board with trying it, maybe even a new style that you haven't done before? So yeah, curious how you've approached that either artistically or on the business side.
So we all know good, fast, cheap, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's like it's kind of in the same spirit where you got story, you got direction, and you got your aesthetic, right? So like for clients or prospects being like, do you have, I'm sort of making this up here, like a healthcare technology startup animation about a product that's for this audience? You're like, if we had that, we would have already created it for you. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's so specific, but like usually we're able to be like, no, but if you can watch these 2 to 3 examples that cut like this one, watch it for the direction, and this one for the story, this one for the sort of style or aesthetic. And of course, like mood board really helps like congeal that too.
Right.
That tends to get them over the hump a bit. So I think it's just being, sort of patient and nimble, and we watch a lot of videos and examples, right, too, to just to sort of have that the Vimeo likes or whatever in the background, so that we can, and Instagram likes, right? Like there's we have a whole inspiration channel on our internal teams, right? We're sort of sharing like these examples for future use cases or opportunities, right? So yeah, there's not a silver bullet to everything, but it's like just trying to meet the middle of that Venn diagram like as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah,
It is a lot of like showing examples, both of like what we've done, but also what we aspire to. Something I say to clients often is like, it's just as helpful to hear what you don't like as it is what you do.
Yeah.
So we know how to, differentiate you from perhaps your competitors, maybe things that haven't worked for you in the past. So no feedback is bad feedback. It's all helpful.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
we're always very excited when they share a whiteboard video and go, we don't want to do this.
Yes.
Wasn't sure where that comment was going.
Right. It was a slippery slope, but we saved it. It's good.
Nice.
Perfect. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So I want to tap your sort of futurist minds here. Where do you see the future of marketing content going? Like, what are you exploring out there?
Honestly, like I mentioned before, I really think short form is going to take off. And I think something that I personally, we all are on social media. We all have feeds that we scroll through and we see what is being churned out. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of like an authentic type of marketing
Mm.
beyond just corporate Memphis, beyond these like almost flat icons and basic stock photography. We've had conversations with a couple of clients that are like, we want to move away from this. We want to add texture. We want to add
Mhm.
this and
Mm.
this. And I'm like, oh my god, yes, this sounds wonderful. Like I
Yay.
want this stuff. It's
Right.
so fun.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that that's a very exciting direction that we're headed in. I do also think, unfortunately, that AI is going to slowly inch her way in,
Oh yeah.
regardless of what we want.
Mm.
Which we've talked about internally a lot. It's really cool to see certain capabilities through ChatGPT or like helping us rotoscope, because Lord
Right.
knows that's very
Yes.
tedious.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very fun to see those certain things kind of be implemented into our workflow without kind of picking away at our ability to be creative.
Mhm.
It's like a comfort thing, right? Like again, which is sort of a lot of what we're talking about here through this process is that like clients are like they're going to get their reps in. They're like, and they're going to see like the power of video in their marketing, right? So it's like they're going to
Mm.
have a hunger for more, and I think that's inevitably going to bear fruit for everybody in this call, but also like internally at those clients and those stakeholders too. It's like there's a lot of our clients are setting up their own studios, their own creative teams internally, and I think
Mm.
that's a good thing, right? Because it's like the sort of like scary factor of video production, like even just 5 years ago, right? It was
Right.
like sort of a non-starter, but now it's like no, you need to do this, and
Mhm.
it's showing showing in volume too, to what Joe's talking about, right? Like you're able to niche down like very specifically to these specific audiences and their their client pain points and the channels and the mediums, right? And so I think it's all positive, and I think we're also here at Gusto really fortunate that like we have our live action production side too, right? So like we can approach a client situation with that opportunity too.
Right.
And I honestly though I think our most fun ones are when we're able to blend, and I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of
Mhm.
clients are going to go too, is like you really do need the human being a lot of times, right, to
Mm.
help
Mhm.
humanize like what it is you're trying to achieve. But stock video doesn't get you very far, and like custom is difficult because like you
Mhm.
need a lot of it to cover a 90-second video, right? So
Right. Right.
I don't think motion is going to go anywhere either. So it's really, and that's that the brand's best opportunity to show off their expression, right? Like that
Totally.
their visual aesthetic. So I think it's really exciting, and yeah, I think the future's good.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that
It's
makes perfect
bright.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, you because you just kind of touched on it a little bit. Do you all have sort of a favorite project that you've gotten to work on, or something that like spoke to you that maybe you weren't even anticipating? Because we've talked on the podcast before about how like sometimes we get opportunities to learn something new that we weren't expecting at all. Like we've had clients for the American Canoe Association, and we learned all about paddling safely in the water, and we did not know that was a
Whoa,
thing until
cool.
that
Yeah.
started. So, and
We
like,
just
you
had
know,
Kelsey on the other day
yeah,
too. We talked. She's the education director at the association, and
yeah. So,
she loves us. And we were talking about animation, and like
Shout
we
out.
know
That's
so
awesome.
much about paddling
yeah,
that like I'm such a better paddler for it. But
right. Like, I
yeah,
can't wait to do that. So,
yeah.
yeah, what kinds of like projects have you worked on that you were excited to learn from? Maybe we'll start with
That feels like a
Nicole this
long
time.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah, Nicole goes
Mhm.
first.
no pressure. Yeah.
It feels like such a long list. Being here for 7 years has been a lot of
Mm.
really amazing projects. To sort of piggyback on what Tim said, I think some of my most memorable projects are the ones where we've had an opportunity to collaborate. So it's not just me owning the process, but a lot
Mhm.
of people come together. I think one of my favorites, it's a little bit older at this point, but it's for Monotype. What
Oh,
designer doesn't love
yeah,
typography?
really. I'm
And
excited.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, so we've been working with them for a little while now, and one of our first projects was to help them launch Helvetica Now.
Mm.
Nice.
Yeah, so we made their like commercial video for that. And it was a pretty expedited timeline,
Mm.
We
if I'm
understand.
honest.
Yep.
Yep.
But, working with our client, our main contact was in the UK. So and we have people on the West Coast, right? So we took full advantage of those time change differences where we would send something at the end of our day and have really concise, clear feedback to start our day the next day.
That's really
So
cool.
again,
Yeah.
and then, that was like, it was quick pace, but it felt organized and efficient. And it's helpful to have, a client like Monotype who really knows what they want in that kind of situation.
Mhm.
So we could dive right in. So at the time when that video was released, it was one of, I think, their most successful campaign at the time.
Nice.
And we have a bunch of hardware,
Yeah.
from our
Yes.
hard work on that. So
Yeah.
in our
Very
claw
cool.
machine in our office.
It's so interesting when like a client like sends something as a return. Like I worked for a company once, a video game company that worked on like a Willy Wonka game, and then
Mm.
like after the project ended, like we just got this huge box in the mail, and it was all Willy Wonka candies and
Oh
stuff,
my
and
God.
like the studio was
Oh,
like
Hey,
nice.
that's
hyped for
awesome.
like 3
Yeah.
weeks. We were
Right.
just like
Yeah.
on candy.
On cocaine, basically.
Yeah, but
That's awesome.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Nice.
What about you, Joe? What did you like working on?
I think going kind of opposite of what Nicole said with a client who like knows exactly what they want. One of my favorite projects that we work on pretty much every year is through the New England Venture Capitalists Association, where
Oh.
the NEVCA, they have this big award show, generally like winter, fall, where they present a bunch of awards, and each year they have a new theme. And it has evolved from our first one was James Bond. Our second one
Nice.
was The Wizard of Oz. We've done Marvel, and last year we did, my favorite was Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
And we did everything from hand-drawn animation. It was all in this like beautiful watercolor gouache style.
Nice.
We did character work, we did a lot of the marketing material, the posters outside. And through that we can like push and be like, I want to try these different animation techniques.
Yeah.
I want to rig with Limber. I want to rig with this and do all of these crazy things. And they just eat it up. They let us go ham, and it is so fun.
That's
It's so
very
fun to
cool.
bring that
Well,
in.
venture capitalists are gonna go in on
Oh,
the,
yeah.
so-
They're right. Yeah, they're willing to take the risk
yeah,
too,
exactly,
right? They
exactly.
understand that.
Big
Yeah,
risk
yeah.
takers, yeah.
Yeah, it always
And-
pays off great. And it's a very fun collaborative project. We get the whole motion team
That's
involved,
very
which is
cool.
always a wonderful, fun thing to do.
That's cool.
And fun fact for that, a few weeks ago, a bunch of us on the team just found out we are New England Emmy nominated for last year's
Whoa.
show.
Awesome. Congrats.
We're excited
Awesome.
to.
Round
Thank
round
you.
of
Yeah.
applause.
We'll throw in
Visually.
the sound effect in there.
Yes. Yeah.
So wish
We're-
us luck
We request
in
yeah.
June.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's very awesome.
Well, very
Yeah,
cool.
congrats.
Yeah, I know. Again, maybe in the.
Did Tim have one? I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
to skip. I don't want to skip.
Oh, the one for me is the launch we did for WebEx for their WebEx hologram capabilities. And so what was unique about this one is it's a product showcase, and it's technically like not their product. It's through Oculus's and other VR devices, right? So it's like the software enablement, but then they had this camera array that does allow for individuals, remotely like this to be like in hologram experience. And so, but they didn't have the camera array for us. So it was really like, okay, how do we tell this story? And so a lot of it was green screen and plates and working with talent and like, doing the show versus tell experience. So the way we did that was with a cinema robot. So like this allowed us to do the tracking and the camera move repeatedly, right? So that we
Awesome.
could do the layers. And so that was a really unique one for us using the cinema robot. But then it also just had like a very tight timeline. So it's kind of like we shot everything at Buck's offices in
Cool.
New York, which is a super cool experience too. And yeah, just got to work with a really talented crew in Brooklyn. And then we had our 3D guy, Derek. Shout out Derek. He was in New York with us as sort of the VFX supervisor. Then we came home, and man, it was just the team knocked it out of the park. And similarly, like that project did really well, and I think it is their highest performing video on their YouTube channel right now too.
That's
So
very
yeah, it's
cool.
always like the scary ones like tend to
Yeah.
bear the most fruit in a way, you know.
There is something to be said about that. Like we've had internal discussions about sort of our sort of workplace boundaries to be like, okay, if we never want to be able to work overtime, right? If a client calls us at 6, we might say, sorry, we'll see you on Monday instead of Friday. But there is something to be said about having moments where there are those tight turnarounds and you have to kind of really problem solve in a slightly different way. And even if it feels exhausting at times, there's something about the camaraderie that comes through that process and like the things you learn from it that are actually quite special, to be honest. Yeah.
It always reminds me of something like a flower or something that has to grow. Like it can only really grow if there's resistance, right? Like if there's something sort of stopping it from growing, and like that's how you kind of get to a better place.
I'll just say there's just a bit of an adrenaline to it, when you
for sure.
have those. It's a little addicting at times.
I think we're all a little addicted.
that dopamine.
It is.
That
It
dopamine.
is. But in a good way. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I think the alternative is probably worse. The ones that just like don't have a deadline and they just march on, to infinity.
Yeah.
We've coined them as snails. We have our snail clients, our snail projects here, and we keep talking about like creating like a physical like race map, like move our snails along the finish line of the wall.
That's a great idea. Because
I might steal that.
Was like
that's really good.
That was like a follow-up question I was going to ask on the side, which is like sort of like what internal thing do you have that's kind of like that adds a little bit of like play to your day-to-day. So that feels like one. Yeah.
Sure. Who's winning?
Oh, I can jump in and tell you we have a cat chat. We all have many kitties. You can see my little cat scratching post back there.
Yeah.
But every day when our cats are doing something crazy or wild or they're just sitting there, we have a cat chat where we just throw images up and we all giggle and laugh. And it is a great little dopamine hit.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked on the podcast a number of times about at like the end of some of our episodes, not the interview ones, but like some episodes that we've done, we'll like share some of our bad ideas that we have.
Yeah.
Like we pitch like bad company ideas to each other, and it always gets really elaborate and
I have
stupid.
a whole Google Keep. This has been going since 2017.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I really like that.
That is so cool.
It's
I love
the
that.
way we
Make
describe
like a yearbook out of it.
Yeah.
The way we describe bad ideas, it's like, solutions to problems no one asked to solve.
Right, exactly.
It's like one of those
Nice.
things.
Yeah.
I'm thinking what the branding would look like for those solutions.
Ooh,
That's really fun.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
Maybe our next bad idea, we'll call you guys and we'll figure out how to
Yeah.
collaborate. We'll put a project together.
Yes.
It'll
I
look
love
dope.
that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So I guess a final question we have here is, if people want to reach out to either, one of you or all of you, what's the best way to get in touch and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, we are at letsgusto.com.
Nice.
And emails hello@letsgusto.com. And Instagram at letsgusto. So I try to keep it pretty simple there. And then Nicole, Joe, and myself are pretty easily found on the gram as well.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Just that this was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Likewise.
Seriously,
Very
this
fun.
was super fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to get to know you all, and it was actually really awesome as a quick aside to, we had a conversation and we were talking about just like, hey, let's, get to know each other a little more. And then we just happened to meet each other physically in person in the Boston area at Another Age Productions, which was so cool. And it was
Shout out to Another Age Productions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's you.
I was like, I was just emailing you
Right.
10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
that was
there's
awesome.
beauty in
was
that.
Really cool.
So awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. And we just really appreciate it. So we look forward to learning more from you and following you and all the good stuff.
Cool.
Same.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.